Hi, I'm Mike McGee, content manager at Course Report, where we help people find and choose the best courses to reach their career goals. Today, I'm joined by Yuriy Ivanov, a software engineering subject matter expert and mentor at Springboard. Yuri's a full stack developer who has worked at companies like Chegg and WeWork, and he's been mentoring students in Springboard software engineering career track since 2022. I'm excited to talk to Yuriy about how AI is changing the day-to-day role of software engineers, the skills that matter most in today's job market, and how Springboard prepares students to build future-proof careers in software engineering. Tell us about your background. How did you become software engineer? What brought you to Springboard?
I did a double major at school, so computer science and international economics. So by the time I was graduating, that was 2009, at San Francisco State University. At that time, it was kind of like right at the end of the first dot-com boom, but before like the mass adoption of high-speed internet and the iPhone, which brought a lot of changes. When I graduated, I made connections here and there, but I went into marketing initially for a good couple of years. But at this point, we have like iPhone 3GS and high-speed internet and our Palm and whatnot. And software became much more interesting. Applications became exciting, for better or for worse, right? And then mobile apps. And so I wanted to kind of jump back into this. But the thing is, I was, 6-7 years removed out of graduating. And I wasn't prepared for any of the new things we were using. So I jumped back into a similar kind of like a boot camp focused on, at that time, Ruby on Rails and mobile developments. And that was it. Kind of like a pivoted in. I'd like to kind of make a joke that I was tired of working long office hours, of long evenings, Thursdays and Fridays at our company. So I jumped in and now I work long hours and weekends, but I love it.
That's great. That's great. So you pivoted back into this industry. How did you get to Springboard, and like how do you support and work with Springboard students?
Randomly, honestly, there is a chain of like markets restaurants called Italy.
Oh yeah.
I don't
Yep.
know if you've heard. So I was doing like in my college days. I was working for them. Then I was working in their marketing division when they were expanding, essentially. But when I went back in tech, I started doing as they were expanding into the online market. So this is my first hit, I suppose, like trial by fire. Is like, hey, we're gonna hire you for this position now. Like, I'm like, I guess I haven't done something like this before. It's like, just learn. At this point, you start making friends and connections and whatnot. So WeWork bought Meetup or merged Meetup or something like that. And a friend of mine says like, hey, come work with us there because we were trying to launch this platform. And he's like, yeah, we're going to be building this in React and React Native and mobile. Was like, I don't know anything about React Native and mobile. I was like, well, this is time to learn. So that was another trial by fire. And then couple years later, they actually reached out to me through their recruiting and said like, hey, we like your story. Apparently, do you have a couple of hours here or there per week to join in this program? And I was like, okay, sounds good. And I've been slowly getting back to school again because a PhD program, a life goal essentially to do a PhD in computer science. And this was kind of like, I was like, all right, so like to do a PhD, you need to like teaching because that's no, you're gonna have to do that no matter what. So like, okay, so before I dive into that, let's see if I can do this at least a couple of hours a week and whatnot. And I liked it, and it's a nice kind of like way to get out of the daily grind of staring at my screens with my team to, well, at least to have like a one-on-one with somebody that's learning and like kind of try to pass on what and the things that I've learned well and the things like, okay, don't do this.
That's great. Yeah, from preparing for this conversation to just hearing your, first few answers here during our interview, uh, I'm not surprised that Springboard reached out to you. Just hearing your story, how you, through different stages, have jumped back into learning, to improving yourself, and to being open to new experiences. Those are the exact kind of characteristics that I look for in our software engineer community here in Chicago. So, because of your unique perspective working as a professional software engineer and then helping as a Springboard mentor, how has AI changed the day-to-day role of software engineers over the past few years? You've been a part of these major shifts in technology, since the, late 2000s. Like, how has AI now kind of changed what you do on a daily basis?
Honestly, I was a late adopter, essentially, and because I got used to, like, okay, this is the documentation, and we read the documentation essentially. So how did it change it for me, right? Like, I was very skeptical. And I still say to my team, like, my GitHub Copilot and VS Code is my best friend and my worst enemy. And whenever I have my back and forth, I say thank you just in case it takes over the world, because I push back a lot on it. But it is becoming a great tool. Not technically AI yet, but it's a whole different conversation, right? It's a very good, it's really good autocorrect. It's like autocorrect like on crazy steroids, which can deliver us a lot of information very quickly to keep us moving. And because a lot of the times right now, product managers want to ship quickly. It's a rat race. It's not always about, and what I've noticed, it's not always about having the new revolutionary product. You can have something that already exists, but if you shipped it quicker than your competition and your version is liked better by your users, your clientele, you're already ahead. But in order to do that, your engineers need to be very efficient. So I could sit and sift through documentation and do a lot of boilerplate code over and over and over and over and over again, at least for like my tests and whatnot. Or I could just embrace the change and let it do it for me, let it come in. At least a lot of the boilerplate that takes me a long time. Yes, I will push back. You have to be very careful, because what the prompt may give you might be an outdated version of Jest or PyTest or whatever it is you're using and whatnot. So you got to be very careful. You got to know what you're doing. But at the same time, it does really speed up your workflow. And when the upper management cares about efficiency, well, that's really, really important.
I think that's a great answer, and works well with the next question about just the general concern of, quote unquote AI replacing software engineers. And with your, initial skepticism, and really from your last answer, understanding where this technology fits in your workflow, what do you think moving forward AI will actually replace, and where will human engineers remain essential, just in the tech industry, software development process, wherever you want to take that question?
Well, when we actually have AI, like actual real AI, we might get to that point at some point. Sure, actually, I think a lot of things will be replaced, like actual AI, which will pass essentially Turing test. What we have right now are, LLMs, right? So this is kind of like maybe like an anecdote and whatnot. Early days of flying, 50s, 60s, I guess some people call it the golden age of flying, Pan Am, whatnot. First 747 was in 1960s, I think. So the cockpit flight crew was three people, two pilots and a flight engineer. Nowadays, a 787 or an A380 essentially can land itself. It can take off itself. It's very automated. I don't know if you've seen. I think 787 still has the old style school like yoke, but the A380, A350, I think they just have like a joystick essentially. The pilot just inputs commands. Question is, did automation in the cockpit replace the pilots? Kind of. It's a trick question because where's the flight engineer now? The third guy that was monitoring everything like weather reports, altitude, whatnot, air pressure, and 40 other things that were right in front of them. Well, they're in front of the pilots. Flight engineers retrain to either do more engineering on the ground or to actually work with the new set of instruments, essentially. So the cockpit trimmed down from 3 to 2, still 2 pilots, and they will all. And don't know. I don't know. Maybe Southwest or Ryanair will start doing 1 pilot, but still 2 pilots is just moved on to more automation. Is that pilot essentially handling everything that the first 747 pilot was doing? Maybe, maybe not, because a lot of things are more automated in that cockpit. But that pilot still has to know everything that's going on around him. So, kind of like pivoting towards this, right? No, you're not gonna wow anybody except for your grandma with your HTML skills. That was cool in 1998. The applications right now are completely much more involved. A lot more logic in there as well. At the same time, we move along with the times, right? So what was considered technical knowledge then is basic knowledge now, and we go along. And what may be some technical knowledge now will be some basic knowledge in 5 years, but some of these tools do help us. Again, if let's say I'm working on, oh God, I don't know, for whatever reason my Redis service is not working. Okay, I can hit the documentation or I can start brainstorming it with my Copilot. But I do need to understand what's coming back at me, essentially. And that's where this relationship is going, essentially. Yes. There's going to be a lot more of this, the AI usage, LLM usage, whatnot. But you really do have to understand you really do have to understand what's coming back at you. Just like a pilot in the cockpit has to understand what just lit up on that screen and what is it telling you.
So we've kind of touched on this with this changing technology, current LLM landscape, trying to reach this future level of true artificial intelligence. What skills do you believe matter most for software engineers today that may not have been as critical 5 or 10 years ago?
If it were up to me, I would be studying like every person with like some C fundamentals for 30, 40 hours at least. But again, for students, and I don't know this probably most, they are working. This is something that they are doing at the spare time in the evenings or the weekends. They don't have time to spend 3 months, 4 months just digging into the C language and all of its semantics, whatnot. You gotta start working and actually getting the concepts that get your job ready. And the concepts change, right? Like I said, I started learning Ruby on Rails. I haven't touched Ruby on Rails for probably 6 years. It doesn't mean that Ruby on Rails is bad. It's still around. It's just the ecosystem moved to different other frameworks, other libraries, whatnot. So what I try to push forward is problem solving, thinking outside the box. It doesn't matter if you're learning Python or Ruby or JavaScript or whatever, C#. The concepts, the underlying concepts are similar. Problem solving, applying what you're learning, and actually thinking about what's going on. What is the code that you're writing? Because that is, I think, will help any new engineers to actually go into the field, and then when they work with AI tools and whatnot, to understand what's coming at them. So rather than just monkey see, monkey do, memorize and do whatever project, and here's a check mark, essentially, you're done. It's more so, okay, you know what? Let's pause on this. What is going on? What are you learning? what's actually happening conceptually. Can you apply this, in a different project? Can you take this, improve on it, and then in the next project, can you actually look at your mistakes and say, hey, that Obi-Wan Kenobi meme, I know this guy, that was me, basically. It's okay. I look at my code 5 years ago and it's like, oh my God, no. And I won't even say something 10 years. I look at it, it's like, oh God. It's always an evolution. So this is what I try to push forward in the curriculum and with any students I work for. Don't just throw in an assignment and be done with it. Let's deconstruct it. Let's work on it. Let's break it. Let's break it and fix it. Let's come back to it and see if we can make it better.
Really appreciate that answer there. So the Springboard software engineering program has a dedicated unit on collaborating with generative AI. And so you were just talking about like a student can, during an assignment use ChatGPT to help complete an assignment. But like, does Springboard teach students to work with AI rather than competing against it or depending on it too heavily?
Right. It's something that evolves like with each iteration. Something that they're working on now, and then I'm helping to advise them on that. I think in general, it's the whole my approach is trust but verify. With another update of the curriculum, I'm pushing them to include, along with a lot of the subunits, kind of like, because a student will say, hey, why do I need to do this myself? I can just punch this into GPT and it's gonna just spit out some answers to me. I can glue this together and done. Yes, as long as you don't breathe in it and don't shake it, whatnot. And hopefully all the versions match up. So my approach is, okay, let's do this, but let's see what happens. And I have examples which I insert into lessons, like, hey, let's see, okay, here's where we can say, and for a lot of boilerplate code, that's actually very good. Here's where we can say, okay, let's use Node.js and Prisma to generate this model. Okay, it's good. Now take a closer look. What's wrong with it? Oh, wait, that version of Prisma that is using, that's legacy at this point. Does it work? Yes, if you're running that version. If you just install Prisma, whatever version they are right now, that's gonna break. It's gonna give you this error. Do you know what this error is? This is where we try to push it. Okay, yes, it's there. The tools are there. The tools will help you. The tools will help you be more efficient. But you have to check the tools, push back. The whole trust but verify. Yeah. It's giving me the information that I need, but is that information up to date? Is that information correct? A lot of these successful companies, it's not that they have their revolutionary product, but they have a similar product that's easier to use, a little bit more approachable, and they have a user base for it. And that's fine. Use those tools, but see what happens if you're not careful in using those tools. Because if you just go and accept anything, glue together anything that's being generated, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be completely not maintainable. Your coworkers will hate you. Everybody else is not going to be able to work with you. And yeah, that's just not going to work.
Yes, definitely don't want that as an outcome for students going through the program. So we've talked about just the rise of LLMs, getting towards AI, and how that impacts the learning experience, how that impacts the software development industry. Springboard's software engineering career track teaches full stack development using the MERN stack. Why is this still a strong foundation for engineers entering this kind of new tech market that has all these AI buzzwords and expectations? Like, why is that strong fundamental focus still important?
It's always evolving. So the current one is focused on MERN stack, and it's not that there is one that's better than the other, essentially, because you can do the same thing in Python. You can build a good stack with Python, whatnot. You can build a good stack with Java or with C Sharp, ASP, whatnot. Um, God, you can go back to Ruby and Rails. Ruby and Rails actually very, very structured, still being used. Um, it kind of goes back to a couple of things. Like I said, like if it were up to me, I would start everybody with 50 hours of C, but students don't have time for this. They can only dedicate a couple of hours per week, per day, depending on the program, and are also trying to balance their work, study, hopefully some fun during their life. So you got to focus on something. You can't just grab everything, as much as I would love to. Notice that just because JavaScript across the board. If you ask a Python purist, that will make them shudder, scream, and run out of the room. I love Python. I use Python daily. But there becomes the balance, right? How can you expose as much concepts to a student within a certain amount of time, right? So this is where I think Modern Stack is actually good at, because you start with JavaScript and you finish with JavaScript. You start reinforcing these concepts, especially the synchronicity, both in client side JavaScript and Node promises, whatnot. It builds all around it. So it helps to be focused, essentially, rather than just a little bit of here, a little bit of here, a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and all of a sudden, wait, what did we just go over? So yeah, that's why Modern Stack, because you if you grasp these concepts, you can apply them to other stacks, essentially. My CS program was C focused and some Python. There's some Fortran too, randomly. But my bootcamp program was a 2010, 11, God, Ruby on Rails. But then I jumped out of Ruby on Rails and went into actually using Node.js and React. But the principles were still there. The principles, the programming language changes, but the principles are still there. The concepts are still there. You're just using a different toolbox. You went from one toolbox to another, but it's still the same, similar power tools to get you to that end result.
This kind of similar theme of the tools may be different, but it's still kind of the same learning approach and understanding how to apply or use those tools. You've also mentioned the evolving nature of Springboard's program. I would assume that two of the constants are just hands-on projects and like building a job-ready portfolio, or at least a portfolio showing that you've applied concepts you've learned during the program. So how do these hands-on projects help students prove real-world readiness to employers in today's hiring environment?
It all depends on where you're going, where you're applying. There was a good for a long while, especially like at corporate or like the big tech and whatnot, that your every interview you got thrown lead code at you, like go figure out whatever, rabbit down the hole, whatnot, shortest path algorithm. A lot of this was just thrown at you, especially corporate, which makes sense because that's how it helps them kind of like thin out the candidates, whatnot. There is some method to it. What I've noticed lately is the kind of like trend, especially with starting out junior devs. Yes, there's some conceptual. Can you talk about concepts? Do you understand the big concepts? You should know what a database index is, the pros and cons of it, whatnot. But then the actual interview part is like, okay, we're a healthcare company. Let's say we manage a bunch of like doctor's appointments through our platform. Here's a sample problem. Can you implement this? So it's basically like a very simple code. So there's this app has, let's say, doctors and uh, 2 appointments. Can you implement another feature to it to have a third type of an appointment, like an urgent appointment? Here's your take home problem. You might implement, you might not, and then come back and talk about it. So, like a very hands on approach, like what we need to solve essentially as let's say we build out the platform. So this is what try to kind of like shape the projects around real world approaches to problem solving. Start with a smaller project, build on to it, build on, make it more complicated, make it more involved. With general like capstone projects, I have been on the side of let's keep it more broad rather than very narrow focused. Rather than having, hey, your project should hit this point, this point, this point, this point, this point. Let's keep it more broad. If a student wants to have a very, I don't know, RESTful API centered project, let's have them do that, because maybe they want to work with data and whatnot. But if a student wants to have all of a sudden explore and have a project that's, let's say, it's kind of like outside of the box of the curriculum and wants to take that React knowledge, dive into React Native and make a mobile app. Yeah, why not? It's still applying all the concept, and the student is actually taking everything that they learned and then some more, or even something more of a plugin for a popular application, whatever, Reddit, whatnot. They're taking everything that they learned, applying it somewhere else. And for hiring managers, and again, it really just depends on the company and the company culture. But what I've noticed, especially with startups, they're really interested in, can you come in and solve problems, and not necessarily conceptual shortest path algorithm problems. Are you able to solve a problem that we're facing right now, because we want to add X amount of features, XYZ, whatever features, and can you dive in? And it does, and it's okay if you don't know everything, but are you able to communicate what you learn, and are you able to actually work with a team? So that's what I try to push on, rather than like very strict, hit this point, hit this point, hit this point. Have them kind of like think and evolve even from what they have learned.
It does make sense. Thank you for that answer. And I think the willingness, the openness to solve problems, to work with a team, like these are like the human elements within this tech field of how to learn and to jump into a new role and contribute. So I really appreciate that. Staying on that kind of tangent, you've talked about your role as a mentor. You've brought up kind of the course designers and evolving the curriculum as technology changes and priorities change. How does Springboard human centric support system, the mentors, the career coaches, the instructors, the community, help Springboard students stay accountable, or just how does that Springboard community help them with this changing landscape in tech, and to help them successfully graduate from the program and set themselves up for whatever careers they want to pursue?
Well, I can only speak from what I've experienced. I will speak from the mentorship part. I've seen this with my students, because I'm kind of like a very hands-on, like with the couple of that I work with. So it's not more, hey, good job on that, good, off to the next assignment, keep it up. No, we're sitting down, we're deconstructing this. We're deconstructing this right now, because I want you to understand this. So we're gonna be working through this. Some students don't prefer that. So I've had students switch over to me because they reached out to Springboard. They're like, hey, I like my mentor, but I think my mentor is a little bit too much of a great job. I want somebody that can challenge me. So they will move a student, let's say, to me, or to another one that's also kind of like a hard ass. and vice versa. I've had a student say like, "Hey, no offense, but like, I just kind of just want to just go through this program. I just don't have the energy to sit down through this for an hour and like to deconstruct." It's like, no problem. So they will match them up with somebody that says like, "Look, you did right." It's a back and forth. I think they try to. I think they try to listen and match up the best they can. So for
Thank you for sharing that. Yep, that mentor student matching process, and then just the adjustment through the course, and just optimizing those pairings based on the learning goals, but also just learning styles. Okay, final question for someone considering software engineering right now, but they're worried about disruption with LLMs and just all the technologies that are coming out that potentially could threaten careers in various job industries. What advice would you give, or what advice do you give to students that you work with about building a quote unquote future proof career?
two things to start with. One, you gotta want it. You can't just come in and expect, all right, I'm just gonna coast through, and then I'm gonna be good. You might get lucky if if you are in big city, lots of demand. Like, I mean, right now companies are trying to get people back into office, so that there's going to be another incentive, whatnot. Yeah, sure, you might get lucky, whatnot. But realistically, you got to want it, essentially. So when you come in, you got to learn. You got to learn. It doesn't matter here, another program, self-learn, college, whatnot. You like just in this field in general, you got to learn, not just kind of like monkey see, monkey do. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to understand. You have to understand the concepts. Spend time learning the concepts. Have your whatever mentor, teacher, whatever program you're in, actually explain these concepts to you and challenge you. Another thing is that once you're done with the program, you're not done learning. You're not. This is not law school, and I have respect for lawyers. My cousin is an amazing lawyer, but he says, "Oh, I'm so glad the Constitution never changes. I learned it. That's it. I apply it." You got to be learning, and languages come and go. Well, I suppose come and go, but become more popular, less popular, whatnot. Frameworks come and go, whatnot. Uh, it's always evolving. Concepts stay, but new things come in. Essentially, I'm still using the concepts from my program back at school. I'm still using the concepts I learned with Ruby on Rails, but I'm applying them in different frameworks with different languages. So just because you just when you're done with the program doesn't mean you're done learning, because you're going to be learning more and more and more and more. So um, you have to be ready for that. But at the same time, it ain't boring, because you're always learning something new. You always It's not stale. That's the good part. But you have to be able you have to come in with a mindset that I'm going to be learning a lot, and a lot of the times, at first, it's not gonna make sense. The second time, it's not gonna make sense, but it does get better. It's not like an x equals y nice curve up. It's more like a step ladder. You're gonna be hitting those walls, and you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, what is this?" And then all of a sudden you're over the hump, and you're like, "Okay, nice, 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 nice. Now I'm coasting." And then another wall just smacks you, and it's like that. It's like a step ladder, essentially. So that's what you gotta be ready for. But if you're learning and if you're advancing, all of this around us, these are just tools, essentially. Um, Going back from the pilots to somebody that's like an engineer and working on cars. Nobody is making a car with their hands anymore. You're working with automated tools, computers, whatnot, and designing all of that, and even an assembly line. But you need to have the technical knowledge to do there. I think a lot of what's going on right now is like it's more automated, but it always has become more automated. Our the previous generation or two previous generations wrote code on sheets of paper. Then they wrote code on Windows 3.1 on Vim in a terminal. Then became nice code editors with autocomplete and linting and whatnot, and now there's a next step. But you do have to know how to use those tools and learn how to use those tools. So that's that.
Well, I think that is a valuable and fitting place to end, having that resilience, that want to, that drive, but also knowing that this is if you want to do it right, a lifelong learning journey. And, being curious, being open to discover new things, being open to run into those walls to get to that next level will set you up to definitely be able to have a longer lasting career. You need to have some resiliency and to be able to persevere. Thank you so much for all of the insights and experience and tips you have shared during this conversation. I'm sure those that are listening or watching will gain a lot, as I have. If you want to learn more about Springboard's software engineering programs, read Springboard reviews on Course Report. This interview was produced by the Course Report team in partnership with Springboard. Thank you.